Hello, and welcome to the first episode of 2025. You're listening to the PRT pod, brought to you by Legal & General Institutional Retirement, the de-risking podcast where we discuss the latest PRT trends and market dynamics with industry experts. Listen, watch and subscribe now on all podcast platforms. I'm joined here today with Dom Moret and Rachel Cutts. Could I invite you guys to introduce yourselves, please?
Hi Roshni, my name's Dom Moret and I lead the team at Legal & General that works with pension scheme trustees, sponsors and their advisors to put in place buy-in and buyout transactions.
Hi, I'm Rachel Cutts. I'm a director in Dom's team and I'm responsible for looking after the commercial aspects of our buy-in and buyout transactions.
Great. And so today's episode is going to be slightly different. We're going to be looking at some snippets from our first episode last year, where our Managing Director of UK PRT, John Towner, and Head of Price and Execution, Natalie Bentley, discussed the trends of 2024. Last year, we started off asking John about his predictions for 2024. Let's have a quick look at what he had to say.
I mean, the real impetus or driver in our market is the acceleration in pension funding and, moving that much closer to buyout affordability.
Would you agree with John's comments around affordability being one of the key drivers in 2024 and what actually happened over 2024?
Yeah, absolutely, Roshni. We definitely saw the demand that we saw in 2023 continue into 2024, and we expect that to continue into this year as well. I guess it's no surprise that it's a fairly well-told story about how scheme funding levels have improved over the last few years. Most schemes have had journey plans in place for many years. There's been significant contributions made by sponsors of those schemes to repair deficits. So when interest rates suddenly rose a few years ago, it's no surprise that many schemes' journeys were accelerated, and many schemes became fully funded to buy out, accelerating that demand. I think when that first happened, there were some predictions of volumes perhaps reaching 70 or 80 billion pounds per year, at least in the short term. We've not necessarily seen that materialise, and I think that's probably driven by a couple of factors. One is that we often say these transactions don't happen by accident, and that's certainly true. There's a lot of preparation involved. So although schemes have been fully funded, they've perhaps taken the time to hedge their exposures, lock in the gains that they've experienced, but take the time to prepare before approaching insurers. And the other is just the way that schemes are approached in the market, particularly the very, very large schemes. I think there was an expectation that some of those would come to market as very large chunks. But we've really not seen that happen, and instead perhaps taking a tranched approach. But we've seen some large transactions of kind of circa 5 billion, but nothing materially larger than that so far. But even without that, the volumes that we've reached as a market in the last few years have been very impressive, in the 45 to 50 billion pound range, and kind of rates adjusted, that's probably almost a doubling when compared back to 3 or 4 years previously.
Yeah, and I just add, to come back to the theme of affordability, that the pensions landscape has changed significantly in recent years, and we're now in a world where the majority of schemes are actually in surplus, at least on a low dependency basis. And I guess what's new for this year is that we now have a government that's exploring relaxing the rules around surplus extraction for schemes, and it's really ignited the debate around buyout versus run-on. So will buyout remain the ultimate destination for most schemes? But I'm sure we'll come on to talk about that a bit later.
Great. And both of you kind of touched on this, where schemes have reached sort of are fully funded and they're in surplus. And it was one of the things that we touched on the beginning of last year. Obviously, reaching fully funded positions quicker than you thought you would does come with its challenges. And this is around being data ready, having your benefit specs signed off legally, and also on the asset side. So let's hear what John had to say last year.
One area in particular on the asset side, it's the illiquids that we've been sort of asked to look at, and I think we and a number of insurers have come up with a variety of different ways that we can help support, lend a hand in that process.
As John mentioned, illiquids was a big sort of concern in the industry last year. How did that play out, and what do you expect for 2025? Is that still going to be an issue?
Yeah, so illiquids have been a key theme in recent years. And as John alluded to in the clip, ourselves and other insurers have really stepped up to that challenge and come up with a range of solutions to help schemes who found themselves in this position of being fully funded but still holding illiquid assets. And those solutions range from being able to accept illiquid assets in specie as part of premium payment for a transaction. It could mean allowing trustees to defer part of the premium while they run off or sell down the illiquid assets. We can use expertise from across our group. So our asset management division has a whole wealth of expertise and can help schemes actually sell illiquid assets from their own balance sheets. There's a whole range of solutions, and we're still working to develop more. So I think it's a fantastic example of how our industry has stepped up to a challenge and found solutions quickly. What I did find really interesting, though, was at our advisor event in December, so our annual event where we host EBCs, reinsurers, lawyers, professional trustees. We actually surveyed our audience and asked them the question, what do you think will be the key challenge facing the pension risk transfer market in the next 5 years? And not a single person in the audience selected illiquid assets.
So does that mean it's no longer a challenge?
No, I don't think so. I think it's still absolutely a consideration for many schemes. I think what's happened instead is that other challenges have come to the fore and really taken the focus away from illiquid assets.
So in that survey at the advisor event, what was the actual challenge that they expected for 2025?
So by a significant majority, the most selected answer was pension scheme administrator capacity. And then the answer that came in second was insurer onboarding capacity.
Yeah, I guess just to provide a bit of context on that. I mean, I guess firstly, it shows how quickly things can move in this market, but what a great track record this market has of stepping up to meet the challenges, as Rachel alluded to with the illiquids. But from that administration perspective, I guess you've got to remember that we are in a market which is supported by wider DB pensions administrators, and they are kind of really feeling the pressure at the moment generally, because it's no mean feat just to keep a DB pension scheme in operation and doing your day-to-day BAU administration tasks. And you can layer on top of that things like GMP equalisation, then you've got pensions dashboards and all these other special projects that are going on alongside that. And then the pension scheme decides they want to do a buyout. So that's another special project layered on top, which requires the administrator to prepare data, to cleanse data, to put it in a format that can be easily digested by insurers. So it's no surprise that's a pinch point, really. And I think it's worth saying that administrators and scheme advisors have done a great job in this space. As I say, it's not easy, and they've done a really good job preparing data. But I guess in terms of what they could do differently, how we can help that, I guess one thing we always say is kind of things don't need to be perfect. So come and speak to us, and we can kind of help with that data preparation, particularly given that the amount of time that administrators have to spare on this is not great, as I said. We can perhaps help with focusing their attention where it will deliver most value. And so just a couple of examples of that. There's no need to go in and get every single member's data spot on accurate before you reach out to insurers. So the important things are things like calculating spouses' pensions, for example, and that has the added bonus that, as well as the data being clean, you know that each insurer is working from the same data set rather than them each individually calculating spouses' pensions. The other thing that we've seen recently as well is how schemes are approaching benefit specifications and how the administrators and the lawyers work together to produce those. And we had a great example recently quite a complex scheme with a lot of sections, and rather than take the approach which we've seen in the past, which is provide a separate kind of fully legally reviewed PDF benefit specification for every single section of the scheme, they did kind of a master benefit specification in an Excel template, and then for each of the sections of the scheme just had the changes from for benefits from the master template. And that's so much easier for us as an insurer and our pricing team to digest, and then if we're successful in the transaction, to then administer going forward. So that was a great innovation, and hopefully saved the administrator on that side some time, and it's certainly saved us some time from a pricing perspective, and ultimately will save whichever insurer is administering that in the long term some time as well.
I echo that. Definitely simplifying things for the pricing team really helps get pricing efficiently, but also helps us deliver our best pricing. I guess over 2024, we were expecting this rise in demand, and we were exploring how we might adjust to this. Let's just have a quick look what Natalie had to say about it.
We've definitely seen a step up in demand for quotes, and we do expect and hope that continues to try and meet that demand as best as we can. We're exploring a number of avenues.
After that point, Natalie did go on to say that we were growing the team to meet this increased demand. Would you say that demand that we were talking about did materialise in 2024, and are we expecting the same for 2025 and upward?
Yeah, definitely. And as we said at the start, that demand has definitely continued, and the growth of the team has continued as well. So we've continued to grow the team from a pricing perspective, but also reflecting what I just said about the pressures on administration and onboarding. We've also committed to broaden the experience and size of that team as well. So we are seeking to grow our post-sale team by 5 to 10% per year over the next few years. I don't know, Rachel, perhaps you can share some thoughts on the various initiatives that we're using there.
Yeah, absolutely. So as well as external recruitment, we're also looking at other ways that we can grow the team, because I guess there are a few points to explore. One is we don't just want to recruit from another administrator, because that doesn't help the industry as a whole if it's just the same people moving around different administrators. But also, this is a really long-term business. We need people who will be here in the decades to come to support pension scheme members. So it's also about attracting new talent. I think it's fair to say not many people leave school or university desperate for a career in defined benefit pensions. So we have to think, how can we attract new people into the industry? And we've got a brilliant grad scheme. We've also got a really successful apprenticeship program, which we've been running for a number of years now. But we're also open to other initiatives as well. So in October last year, we were really pleased to welcome 15 members of the British Steel Pension Scheme's in-house administration team over to Legal & General following our final transaction with that scheme. That's also allowed us to open up a new office in Glasgow, and was really just a fantastic way of bolstering our team, but also bringing in new expertise that can then be used to support our wider policyholders as well.
That sounds great. So that covers the people side. Is there anything else that we're doing to help with this increasing demand?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not just about people, as you say. It's about technology and processes and wider solutions too. And a great example of that is our flow solution for smaller pension schemes. And that really focuses on kind of standardization for to make things more straightforward and to streamline things, but also an element of tailoring to enable smaller schemes to receive the first class post-transaction member care that they would expect from an organisation like Legal & General. So crucially there, we allow schemes, reflecting what we said about the pressure on administrators at the moment, we allow schemes to select their data cleanse window, so the period between the point at which they transact and the point at which they move to buyout, so that they can be realistic about the other tasks that they need to carry out. So we don't impose a strict 1 year or 2 year data cleanse window. They're allowed to look at the other projects they have going on, how long will it take them to complete GMP equalisation, and they can reflect that within the contract so that everyone's aligned and can collaboratively work towards getting the scheme to buy out within their chosen timeframes.
That sort of makes it more like realistic deadlines and making sure that we're ready for it and they've got the time to do it properly. If anyone's interested, we did do a flow podcast at the end of last year where we discussed with Fee and Danny about the flow proposition. And it's great to see that we're addressing the increasing demand on the smaller side.
Yeah, it's really important for us to be able to support that increase in demand, as you say, but most importantly, reflecting what we said about the increasing pressure on DB scheme administrators, really making sure that we grow that solution sustainably so that we're able to support as many schemes as possible.
That's great. So that's all the clips I had from last year's episode. So to collect a few for next year's, we'll look at 2025. What would you say the key trends for 2025 will be?
This is such a risk. Now we know that they'll be played back to us next year and we'll be told how wrong we were. So I guess maybe if I take it from a market perspective, and then maybe Dom, you can cover what that means from an L&G perspective. I think from the market overall, I'd probably suggest three key themes. So continued positive outlook, discussion around buyout versus run-on, and also changing landscape of the insurance market and what that might mean for processes for trustees. So taking those in turn, continued positive outlook, it's always trickier at this time of the year to put a prediction in place for where we think market volumes might get to this year, but sort of circa 45 to 50 billion pound market again feels reasonable, certainly from where we're sitting today. Secondly, the buyout versus run-on debate. So as we mentioned at the start of the podcast, the conversation on this has really opened up. Some schemes are still targeting buyout in the near future. Others are considering whether they might want to run on potentially for a period of time, extract surplus along the way and then buy out, or even perhaps to run on indefinitely. From the initial conversations that we're having in the market on this, the sense that we get is still that most schemes will ultimately target a buyout transaction. Trustees want to feel that they've fulfilled their fiduciary duties and have fully secured their members' benefits under the insurance regime. And corporate sponsors ultimately want to remove these legacy obligations from their balance sheets and be able to really focus on their core businesses instead. But I mean, it's a conversation that we're very keen to continue to be a part of. And then final point was the landscape of insurers participating in this market. So something we haven't mentioned yet today was that there were 2 new entrants to the market last year, bringing the total number of insurers who are actively quoting on buy-in and buyout transactions to date to 10. And there's at least one more rumoured new entrant for this year. So potentially trustees could be looking at a market of at least 11 insurers to select from. So fantastic that trustees have greater choice, but what I think it will mean is that trustees might need to shortlist insurers before they've even seen any pricing. So non-price factors are going to become more important than ever. And I guess by non-price factors, I mean things like member experience, brand, track record, ability to deal with complexity, asset solutions, ESG. That there's a whole host of features, and different features will be more important to different trustee boards. But I think it's really important that trustees go into any process understanding what each different insurer in the market can offer and working with their advisors to make sure they're really clear on their objectives and what they want from their ultimate insurance partner and can make a decision potentially earlier on than they've ever had to before to select a shortlist of insurers to explore a buy-in transaction with.
And Dom, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I guess as Rachel said, just to put that in context for L&G, I guess. And I guess I'll start by saying with that last point around kind of pre-selection of insurers, if we're speaking to trustees or to consultants, we're saying kind of please engage us, right? And we're definitely happy to be involved in those conversations up front. We recognise that different trustees will have different priorities, but we hope that in the majority of cases we're a sort of a valued counterparty and will be kind of invited to participate in their process. I guess from a market volumes perspective, we've been very open with the market in our ambitions to write of the order of 50 to 65 billion pounds of new business volumes over the course of the next 5 years. So we're very committed to the market. We're excited to see the growth in the market. But it's important to us that we can continue to deliver solutions for all pension schemes. And I think we've touched on a few various solutions in this podcast already, such as the kind of illiquid asset solutions that are perhaps more appropriate at the larger end of the market, all the way through to our flow solution for smaller pension schemes. And then I think as L&G, we're quite uniquely positioned in the buyout versus run-on space. We're very fortunate that we have an in-house asset manager, and we have a lot of pension schemes that have very, very long-standing relationships through our asset management colleagues. And I guess that gives us a unique perspective of being able to provide from both a run-on or investment management perspective, but also from a buyout perspective. And I hope that we can have some very interesting conversations with pension schemes over the course of the next year about being able to run on, but with the option to buy out. And what better place to do that than with an organisation that has kind of a seat in both camps, really. So perhaps managing, as a pension scheme, managing your assets with a view to running on, but with some sort of trigger-based approach that kind of as you approach your target, you can take risk off. But also, if you meet your target sooner than expected, you have triggers in place that allow you to move to buyout and lock in the gains that you've seen, and move to your end game sooner than you might have otherwise expected.
That sounds really good, and it sounds like it's going to be an exciting year ahead, and lots of work to keep us busy. Thank you for being here, and thank you for listening in. I'm Roshni Sakaria, and this is the PRT Pod. Don't forget to listen, watch and subscribe now on all podcast platforms.